getting, squashed on the subway where I can barely hear myself think. That's what I want my life to look like. So I came back to my roots. I live in Queens and Astoria. It's about a 20-minute commute subway ride into the city. And that's my little secret out in Queens. New Yorkers, we get kind of a bad rap for being aggressive. I don't know that we're necessarily aggressive. We just live in the moment. We don't hold on to things. You bump us in the subway, we're gonna go and yell some profanities, and then we move on with our lives. We do not think about it again, ever. We don't go home and we like, honey, someone bumped me on the subway this morning. No, we've moved on. We don't have the car to cry in or the parking lot. Like, we sort of do things in the moment. So if you're upset and you're on the subway, you just cry. So you have the subway cry. We like you to keep moving. We've all agreed to just be in motion in Manhattan, going fast. So if you ask us for directions, we're going to give you directions, mostly because we want you to keep moving and not obstruct the flow of traffic. If you fall on the sidewalk and the same person who you bumped on the subway earlier sees you, they will pick you up because they don't want you obstructing the flow of traffic, not because they remember who you are. They have moved on. If you still feel guilty about bumping that person on the subway earlier yesterday, move along. They haven't thought about you again. You don't need that. So we live in the moment. It is a give and take city. It's definitely a challenging place to live. I've certainly been in relationships that have been way worse than the relationship I've been in with New York. It's 50-50. It gives a lot. I give to it. It takes. You get a great day like today.
It's free.
New York, you can do whatever you need to do. Fine. I had it today. You get free coffee, or then get splashed by the taxi coming by. And it's just a little, give and take. Some people don't like it here, and that's perfectly fine. We don't want you to be here. We can't have everybody here. There are plenty of people here already. And that's okay. And then there are the people who come and they last for about 7 years. Most people who move to Manhattan last for about 7 years, and then they run out of savings and they've racked up enough debt, and they want to have children, or they want a car, they want open spaces. They gotta move on with their life, and that's fine. It's time for them to leave, because you know what happens? They leave their apartment. And then it becomes available, which is what we need. So the dream apartment in New York is a $2,000 a month, one-bedroom apartment. That is the dream. That's the dream. It exists. It is not available. You cannot have it. Someone else has it, and they are not giving it up. So unless you have a fairy godmother that's going to come bop you on the head and say, you can have a $2,000 one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan, it's not going to happen for you. If you find something under $3,000, do not look it up online and try to see if it has a bad landlord or it has history of bed bugs or anything like that. Just take it. You can handle it. You can figure out what you need to do to have that under $3,000 a month one-bedroom apartment in Manhattan. Because it's not going to come up again. So $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. It's kind of expensive. You can find something cheaper if you go past Harlem, Washington Heights, deep Brooklyn, not the Brooklyn we're going to see on the tour. Like that's too close. You can see Manhattan. It's not going to be cheap. City Queens, New Jersey. You can find something less, but otherwise it's going to be a little spendy. Who can afford these apartments? Certainly I can't. Well, we got a lot of big industries in New York, finance being one of them. Wall Street. You work on Wall Street, you make a lot of money. Wall Street's valued somewhere around $436 billion. So they got money there. High tech, Google, Stripe, Venmo, those folks, they make a lot of money. I'm a single woman. One day my life could change. I could be one of those people who could afford one of those apartments. You never know. Keep me in your thoughts, please. Tour guide Alexis. So those are our big main industries. The next biggest industry is real estate. So owning the apartment building that people then pay $10,000 a month for a one-bedroom apartment in. That's where it's at. That's gold, because then you make enough money to hire a super and a landlord, and you just sit there pretty making sure your fire insurance is up to date, because you're worried about the place burning down, because then that's trouble you have to deal with. Otherwise, there's no trouble you have to deal with. So insurance is our next biggest industry: life insurance, fire insurance, followed by healthcare. We've got 20 million people coming to New York City for doctor's appointments, surgery, voluntary, and preventative. And then the next biggest industry is tourism, and that is you. Thank you so much for choosing the Circle Line today. We appreciate you. New York's you know, it's like our sixth largest industry, and it's been rough the past 2 years. And we're only about 60% of what we normally do. So we do really thank you for choosing Circle Line. It makes it possible for me to have a job, for my crewmates to have a job. Thank you for spending your money. I hope you enjoy your time in New York City. I apologize for the $25 cocktail. I don't know. That was a choice you made, not me. But, you know, I apologize for them. But they do exist. They shouldn't exist, but they do. So we're going to get underway in just a little bit. I'll have a safety announcement once we have to make sure everybody's on board. The umbrellas will not pay. We're here originally, the indigenous folks here for millions of years, and then the Dutch arrived in 1624, and they're like, cool, this is Gabe, he's telling everyone we're backing up. It's feeling kind of perky, I like it. So the Dutch arrived, and they're mostly interested in trade. They're more interested in trade than they are in colonizing. They want to come, make money, and go home. That's their plan. So the Dutch arrived, and they're really excited about the beavers. They see a ton of beavers on the island of Manhattan, and they're like, hats, warm, waterproof hats, and great big waterproof jackets. The Russians are gonna love it. So they're really excited. They're gonna make money. And then they make a deal with Lenape. They think they're buying the island of Manhattan. But the Lenape, the indigenous people, don't believe in land ownership. How can you own the land? It gives to you, you give to it. It's an exchange. So when the Dutch give them 60 guilders and some trade goods, or $300, not a very good deal for the island of Manhattan, they just think it's a good faith payment. They're going to work the land together. So we are still on indigenous unceded lands and water over here in New York. We are going to end up going south, but the tide's taking us out this way, so we're going to come out and turn around. Not to be confused about what's happening. So the Dutch arrive, and they're here for 40 years, leaving their imprint on what they call New Amsterdam. And then the British take over. About 40 years later, and it's not a smooth transition, but basically the deal goes. The Dutch are annoyed that the British are still bothering them on some of their trade routes. Remember, they want to make money in Suriname, in South America, and the island of Run in Malaysia. Those are the two spots that are no good. And they say, hey, Britain, if you let us have those two spots, we'll give you Manhattan. And the Britons are like, really? Suriname, island of Run? Great, let's do it. So the Treaty of Breda is signed, and what is New Amsterdam becomes New York. Now, like, fast forward through the British Revolution, the Americans are wanting to erase everything British about New York. They don't want to remember that past. But they keep the name New York. I'm kind of surprised they didn't turn it back to New Amsterdam, but I guess New York was, like, solid at that point. So they keep a lot of the old names, they erase a lot of the British names. We get names like Harlem, Brooklyn, Staten Island, Vanswort, Roosevelt. These are all Dutch names we've kept post the British American Revolution. The Dutch were here for 40 years, and they very much leave their footprint on Manhattan. New York feels different than the rest of the United States, and I think it's because of the Dutch. The Dutch are much more inviting to immigrants. They also have their own little red light district. Hey, thanks, right? So New York feels different, and I think it's because of the Dutch. 40 years is a long time. When the British took over, they did not make the Dutch leave. They allowed them to just kind of stay. If they were having a hard time populating the island, they're like, yeah, you can stay, no problem. As we're turning around, just behind the Circle Line dock, we have the gray Intrepid aircraft carrier vessel. That's the Intrepid. It was active during World War II, the Cold War, and the Korean War. Today, it's a museum for airspace and sea travel. And on the far side, you can see the Concorde, one of the original Concorde airplanes on the pier. We're going to come back that way. We're going to come under the George Washington Bridge, which is in the distance, on the right side of the boat. We're going to come back under that. I'll save it for when we do that. And we're on our way. Across the river, this is the Hudson River. Across the river is New Jersey, specifically Weehawken. Weehawken is where the famous duel between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr took place. Spoiler alert, 200 years later, both guys are dead. So that took place up on the cliff. If you're a fan of Hamilton the musical, you'll remember the Empire State Building for the other side. And then as we get a little further down, there's another large outcropping of buildings on the waterfront, and that's Hudson Yards. Hudson Yards is built on top of the old railroad yard. So the trains that are not in use from Penn Station, they're hanging out there. They're still there. So not only do we own land now, but we can own the land on top of somebody else's land. So air rights. So all those buildings are built on top of someone else's land. The tallest building is 30 Hudson Yards. It has an observation deck called The Edge, which has a little triangle sticking out of the building with a glass bottom floor, so you can see all the way down, which sounds terrifying to me. I will not be going up there. You can also rappel off the side of that building if you're feeling really like you need some adrenaline. It's like $85 or something like that a person. Crazy. I'll just be on the boat. My friend was like, how can you be scared of heights? You're on a boat all day. And I was like, I don't see how those two things are related. She was like, well, you're not safe on either of them. I'm like, well, I can swim. I cannot fly. Like, I don't understand how. That's confusing, but that's how it goes. Down close to the waterfront, there's a sculpture called the Vessel. It's got interlocking staircases, and it's kind of gold. The artist named it TBD The Vessel. To be decided The Vessel. Thomas Heatherwick wanted the public to submit ideas on what to name it. The public came up with ideas like Stary McStairface and The Hive and King Kong's Jungle Gym. And it was concluded that the public could not be trusted with such a task. So it remains called The Vessel. Behind Hudson Yards and in on 9th Avenue is the High Line. It's an old elevated freight rail that was abandoned in the 70s. And there were some people who were illegally trespassing and maybe giving tours of the High Line. And then the city was like, maybe we should have it be available for everyone. So they turned it into a public park. They hired a landscape architect to make it all pretty. And the landscape architect loves fall. He loves fall so much, he says there's 5 seasons: fall, winter, spring, summer, and fall again. And if it is fall right now, I would recommend checking out the High Line on the street if you have an opportunity, because, next time you come, it might not be fall. But you can see the beautiful trees along the waterfront. The waterfront used to be all industrial shipping space until the 70s when they all moved away. And then the city was like, what do we do with the waterfront? The most valuable property anywhere. Well, they decided to turn it into a public access park. It's great because then behind the waterfront, where there used to be all industry, people now want to move to be next to the park. So now they have all these apartment buildings alongside the park. So they've turned the neighborhood around really fast. The name of the game, architecture-wise, is to build a building that is recognizable from the skyline. So if you say, that's an interesting looking building, they have succeeded at their job, because it makes you think about it and remember it. Most of them don't have names, they just have addresses. But a lot of them have nicknames. We'll talk about a little bit on the tour. We're coming past Chelsea Piers, which is the blue piers with the red and white stripes. That's a famous boarding facility. It's also where Law and Order is filmed. The green netting on the far end is protecting us all from golf balls, because there is a 4-level golf driving range there. So if you love to hit a golf ball, that's a great spot for it. And it's been made famous in many TV shows and movies. If you recognize it, you're probably right. The one that comes to my mind is Serendipity, but there's lots of other ones out there too. On the New Jersey side, we're now looking at the great town of Hoboken. Hoboken is 1 square mile and home to Kate Boss, Frank Sinatra, and the first ever played Major League Baseball game. Hoboken is 1 square mile, and for having 1 square mile, it has the most bars and churches of any square mile in the United States. So there's a lot of drinking and a lot of praying going on in Hoboken. On the Manhattan side, we're coming alongside Little Island. Little Island is being held up by a bunch of tulip-like structures. The artist is also Thomas Heatherwick, the same guy who did The Vessel. I like to think that the tulips are kind of a homage, harkening back to our Dutch days, but I think it was just a cool structure, and it made so the waves didn't crash onto anything solid. It's a bit of an Instagram trash, if you ask me. Not a whole lot to do unless there happens to be a concert or an event happening at one of the amphitheater concert spaces. But a beautiful park, and then afterwards you can go station and catch a ferry across the Hudson to Manhattan. Pre-pandemic, about every day, about 50,000 people were taking the ferry from the Erie-Lackawanna ferry depot to Manhattan. A lot of people coming over. Today, of course, a lot of people aren't coming every day, if they're coming at all. And, you know, I feel for like the coffee shop people and the restaurateurs, the people aren't coming regularly, but who I really feel for are the shoe shine people. Because even though people are coming back to work, they're not wearing nice shoes that are shineable, you know? People, we didn't wear shoes for 2 years, so now we're not going to wear the leather shoes. It's just, you know, times have changed. So if you're wearing nice shoes and you pass a shoe shine person, please get your shoes shined. They need it. Also on the New Jersey side, there's a white sculpture of a woman's face. It's called Water Soul. It's by the artist Joe May Plenza. Water Soul is a sculpture of a woman's face. Her eyes are closed and her finger is to her lips, implying shh. The artist wanted you to pause and listen to the message of the river. And what does the river say? Clean me up, please clean me up. We've definitely been throwing our waste into the river for a long, long time, and it's about time that we clean it up. There's a project called the Billion Oyster Project trying to reintroduce oysters into the harbor. Oysters, when they eat, they filter the water through their teeth and effectively clean up the water that they're in. So the oysters, there used to be billions and billions of oysters in the harbor, and New York Harbor is one of the largest, best harbors, natural harbors in the world. It's 5 miles by 4 miles, and there were so many oysters they could clean the harbor in a matter of days, if you can believe that. So we're trying to get that many oysters back into the harbor. They're collecting used oyster shells from oyster bars to rehabilitate the beds, and as of 2018, the oysters are here. They're back. There's not billions of them, but they are cleaning. So this is great. I'm not quite ready to dip my toes in the water, but you know, maybe. On either side of the river right now, there are some brown boxes, and those are the Holland Tunnel ventilation towers. So Clifford Holland designed a tunnel that goes under the riverbed, and because of that, you have a lot of carbon monoxide in the tunnel. So in order to fix that problem, he designed ventilation towers that have about 80 fans in any of the towers, cleaning out the air, circulating out the air in the tunnels every 90 seconds so that people can breathe. Comment on oysters being back in the harbor, cleaning the harbor. If you do go to a restaurant that is advertising local oysters, maybe don't eat there. That would be my tip for you. Don't eat the local oysters right now. Maybe in 40 years or so. On the Manhattan side, we got a view of the World Trade One or Freedom Tower. World Trade One is the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. It's 1,776 feet. The spire itself is 400 feet. To me, that's cheap. You don't get to be the tallest building in the world if 400 of your feet is a spire, but no one asked me. That's fine. It has an observation deck on the 102nd floor, got a great view of the entire city. There's observation decks are really competitive right now in Manhattan. So if you ask me what's the best observation deck, I'll say, what view do you want? Do you want a $25 cocktail with your view? Like, what are you hoping to achieve with your evening? Then we can talk about it. I like history and a view. I like Rockefeller Center for Central Park and Empire State Building. And you get like Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island in the background. So World Trade One, and then just to the right of that, there's a kind of a hole in the skyline, and that's where the Twin Towers stood. There are 2 infinity pools in the footprints of the Twin Towers on the ground level. The infinity pools are powered by so many streams of water to represent all the lives lost in the attacks, rather than just one long stream of water. The names of the people who lost their lives are etched in the granite around the pool. The granite's heated so that the names will never be covered, and the names are organized in a way that reflects who knew each other, who went to lunch together, who sat next to each other. It's a very thoughtful memorial called Reflecting Absence. So if you have a chance to check it out, I highly recommend checking out the 9/11 Memorial. On the New Jersey side is Jersey City. Jersey City is the fastest growing city in the nation right now. burden on the state later. But most people did not, so they either lied or they got with their friends and they were like, hey, do we have $25 between us? And we're like, no, we're still short. What if we get you involved? We got $25? Now we're at like 20. How about you? We get 5 people involved. Do we now have $25? Yes, we do. So the person at the front of the line gets the $25, puts it in their pocket, and they have $25. They say, yes, I have $25. And after their interview, they take the $25 out and pass it to the person behind them, and then they have $25 in their pocket. And they just keep passing it down until all is said and done, and they redistribute the money, and voila, everyone had $25 and didn't lie when they had the moment to. And then you go, if you pass the interview process, you go get your money exchanged, and then you go to the concession stand. And the concession stand is an incredible place, I hear. Coffee, lemonade, sandwiches. One woman said that the sandwich lasted her all the way to Minnesota. I don't know. I can't imagine such a sandwich, but maybe when you're really hungry and not going to eat much, it could. On the New Jersey side is the New Jersey train station. So if you got processed to Ellis Island and you did not want to come back to New York, you would take the New Jersey train station, a train somewhere else in the continental U.S. And if you didn't speak English, they put your destination on a piece of paper and pin it to your jacket because they didn't want you to get lost somewhere along the way and not get off in the right place, or get to the end of the train line and have people still on board and be like, speaking English, what are we going to do with you? I'm in the New Jersey train station. We're coming up to Ellis Island. Ellis Island, the main building has the 4 turrets. It's still a little ways away, but I gotta talk to you about it before we get there, because then we have to talk about the statue. But Ellis Island, if you didn't pass the medical exam, you'd go into one of the 17 hospital pavilion buildings, which are on the far side of the island when we approach it. They had 300 doctors and nurses working there, some of the best care in the country at the time. So they wanted you to get healed and made well there. They didn't want to send you off into the middle of the United States with a broken arm. They wanted you to heal there, or if you were pregnant, they wanted you to have the baby there. They had 300 babies at Ellis Island. They used Florence Nightingale's concept of multiple hospital pavilions, so multiple buildings, so the disease wouldn't flow through the buildings. Very smart. If you feel like checking out Ellis Island, they have a great audio guided tour, and there's a company, Untapped, which does a abandoned hospital wings guided tour. You have to be 14. It's a hard hat tour. There is asbestos, but it's a fun tour. If you think that your family came through Ellis Island, you can check out ellisisland.org. They digitize all their records, and that's the spot you can check that out. So Ellis Island coming up with the 4 turrets. That's the main registry center where the initial interview, medical exam, and all that would happen. Statue of Liberty is coming up. Oh, she's wearing green today. I love it when we're matching. Oh, it's so great. So the Statue of Liberty is a gift from the French people to the American people. It is designed by Frederick Bartholdi. He was really into big statues. He designs her with a torch in one hand and a tablet in the other. The tablet reads July 4th, 1776 in Roman numerals. The design, her outside, she's made out of hand-hammered copper, 300 pieces of hand-hammered copper. So when we get up close, you can see the seams where the pieces come together. It's also where the dirt ends up making a line. Copper, as it ages, becomes green, and the green is called a patina. Iron rusts and deteriorates, but the copper actually becomes stronger as it ages. It's one of the reasons it's so valuable. The green, the patina, makes it more water and wind resistant. So it was a thoughtful move. Bartholdi chose copper because it gets stronger over time. Liberty makes you stronger. Having suffered escaping bondage, she's stronger over time. So Bartholdi does the outside, and Gustav Eiffel does the inside. So the inside of her kind of looks like the Eiffel Tower, except there's a spiral staircase going up the middle of the building all the way up to the crown. Don't worry if you didn't get tickets. It's a 20-minute stair climb. You're not missing out on too much. We get a great view from the boat. But what you are missing out on is going up into the torch. Now, originally, you could climb up the lady's arm, up into the torch, up into the open air where there's just a guardrail. They allowed 12 to 15 people up there at a time. Can you imagine the ladies in their skirts, like going up just a ladder, up to her arm? Oh my goodness. My mom, bless her, she says, I think I went up into the torch. I was like, Mom, they closed it in 1916. You are not that old. probably the crown then. I was like, yeah, probably the crown. Love you, Mom. Love you for wanting to have participated and done the cool thing. So the Americans were on the hook for the statue herself, the French were on the hook for the statue, the French people paid for her, and then the Americans were on the hook for the pedestal, which is the stone part on the bottom. And I'll save that story till we get to the end. But what is up there is a plaque by Emma Lazarus with the famous line, "Give me your tired, your poor, huddled masses yearning to breathe free." So if you can imagine the people coming in from under the Verrazano Bridge, which is off to the other side, that's the Atlantic Ocean. The bridge wouldn't have been there. With the big ships of people coming in, they would have seen the Statue of Liberty and known that they had made it. And then they would have gone on and been processed. So I'm going to let you enjoy the Statue of Liberty. Liberty enlightening the world. And we are going to go by on both sides. He was French. What did he do? And so he designed her face after the least attractive woman he could think of, his mother. I know. And if you do take a picture, if you take a peek on Google, Charlotte Bartholdi, she does kind of look like George Washington in drag. So appropriate. She looks like that. The Americans were on the hook for the pedestal, or for paying for the pedestal. It was a weird gift. The friendship, a really big statue as a sign of friendship between the Americans and the French. What a strange thing. She is facing France, to remind France that they could also become a democratic republic, which was kind of the whole point behind it. Thankfully, France followed suit. So the boxes of the statue arrived, and the Americans were like, "Oh yeah, well, guess we should probably put money together for the pedestal." So they put the arm together with the torch, and they toured it around the park, hoping that they could raise awareness and funding. But the people complained. They wrote in letters saying that their children were having nightmares of arms coming out of the ground with flames in their hands. So that didn't work out so well. And then they did some fundraising and such, but basically Joseph Pulitzer comes along and saves the day. Joseph Pulitzer runs the New York World newspaper. And in order to be famous back in the day, you have to have your name on the front page of the newspaper. That's the only way you know. There's no other way you can be famous. There's no TV, there's no radio, there's no Instagram, nothing. Just the newspaper. Joseph says, if you donate even a penny to the pedestal project, I will put your name on the front page of the newspaper. And people are like, what? Everybody starts donating nickels, pennies, and dimes. School children, housewives, immigrants, blue-collar workers, everybody donates anything that they have to get their name on the front page of the newspaper. And it's win-win-win. We raise over $80,000 of donations of pennies, nickels, and dimes. People get their name on the front page of the newspaper, and Joseph sells a lot of papers because people want to buy the paper with their name on the front page of it. The first GoFundMe, the original GoFundMe, crowdfunding, Joseph Pulitzer, and the pedestal. We're coming by Governor's Island on the right side of the boat. Governor's Island was originally Nut Island. The indigenous tribes in the area knew it was time to go to the island because the nuts would be in bloom when they saw the shad bush bloomed. And all of the tribes would come to the island for a great big trading moment and harvesting of the nuts. Later, the Dutch call it Nutten Island, and then the British rename it Governor's Island. They call it Governor's Island because that's where the governors end up living. One governor in particular is extra exciting, Lord of Cornbury. He likes to dress in women's clothing and is frequently cited as bouncing around the Battery. Every now and then he would announce to the people of New York that they could come catch a glimpse of the Queen if they came to Governor's Island. Now, Lord of Cornbury looked a lot like his cousin Queen Anne. So people would row their rowboats out to Governor's Island, and trumpets would sound, and down would come the Lord of Cornbury, dressed as his cousin, Queen Anne. And I think everyone was just delighted to see the Queen, whether it was the actual Queen or not. Today, Governor's Island, it was a military base for 200 years, and today it's owned by New York. They bought it from the federal government for a whopping $1 bill. fortified the harbor in 1811 in preparation for the War of 1812. The British were still giving us a hard time after the Revolutionary War, and that we'd lost Manhattan during the Revolutionary War, so we wanted to fortify the harbor, make sure they couldn't take it from us again. So the British came to check it out, and they're like, oh yeah, that's not a win for us anymore. So they went down to Washington, D.C. and burned that down instead. So we got fortifications on all the islands, including Battery Park. The base of Battery Park is in the trees right next to the white tent on Manhattan. There's another round Castle Clinton, which is another one of our fortifications. We have the Staten Island Ferry coming by, the big orange ferry. Hello, ferry people. They are headed probably home. Connects Staten Island with Manhattan. It is free. It runs 24/7, and it's for pedestrians and bicyclists only. Some of you may remember from Sex and the City that it had cars on it. It does not anymore, and that was filmed a long time ago. Things have changed since then. Battery Park is named the Battery because when the Dutch were here, this was Fort Amsterdam, this was kind of their main spot, and the batteries where they kept all their ammunition. And later it becomes Battery Park. Battery Park is actually all landfill. That is landfill from when we plowed down all the hills in 1811. The original shape of the island you can tell by looking at the different buildings, the shape of the buildings. That's where the original shape of the island is. We've expanded the island a number of times over the years. When we plowed down all those hills, when we dug out the subways in the 1900s, and then again in the 1960s, and then in the 1980s, we expanded it one more time. On the Governor's Island side, we have another ventilation tower. That's for the Brooklyn Tunnel, the big tower at the tip of the island. On the Manhattan side, we're coming by two ferry terminals. The green and the orange one is the Staten Island Ferry Terminal. And then the one next to it that's all beautiful cast iron, green, yellow, purple, and pink, that is the Governor's Island Ferry Terminal. And that's my favorite building in all of Manhattan. I think the cast iron is beautiful, the paint job is beautiful. They renovated it in 2020 and added some glass retail space on the top of it so they can save money, which is really smart. One of the businesses that moved in is Cipriani, a really fancy restaurant. So on a really good tip day during the holidays, I might take myself there so I can have dinner in my favorite building in Manhattan. So that's the Governor's Island Ferry Terminal. We're coming up on Brooklyn on the right side of the boat. We got some shipping yards and then the Brooklyn Bridge Park. We're coming up to the Brooklyn Bridge next. The Brooklyn Bridge was a wonder of the world when it was completed. It was the first bridge to span such a wide breadth of water. It was made possible by the steel cable. John Augustus Roebling designed the bridge, and then he passed away, and his son took over, but his son also took ill, and then his son's wife, Emily Warren Roebling, took over the project. And she was a mathematician. She learned all the engineering to make sure she could run the project, and she's the one who made it happen. And some people call the Brooklyn Bridge Emily's Bridge, because she's the one who made it happen. It was a world wonder, and it took 14 years to build. On Bridge Day, the day that it opened, one woman said it was bigger than the landing on the moon. She lived in the moon, and Bridge Day was more important. The entire city shut down so that people walk across the bridge. This is the first time you can walk across from Manhattan to Brooklyn. Suddenly you can walk. What a miracle. This was at a time when Brooklyn was its own jurisdiction. It was its own city. Brooklyn was the third largest city in the nation. New York, Chicago, Brooklyn. And then it became one of New York's boroughs in 1898. New York has 5 boroughs: Manhattan, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. And we're going to get to see them all. You just stop Staten Island, and we're just going to circle Manhattan, so we'll see it the whole time. On Bridge Day, Emily Warren Roebling was the first to cross the bridge. She showed up in her carriage with a rooster on her lap, with a sign and a victory. She opened the window and she waved to all the men she worked with on the project, and they all tipped their hats to her, knowing that Emily was the one who made the bridge possible. And off she went across the bridge. Victory. We're going by FDR Drive, which is the Purple Highway. Normally I'm not into, million-dollar paint jobs, but I really do like the Purple Highway, or the Lavender, Periwinkle, almost Purple Highway. It's meant to make you feel calm and at ease. And for some reason it works for tripped getting off the bridge, and she screamed, and then another woman screamed, and then everyone thought the bridge was falling down, so they all stampeded off the bridge, and there was a big body pile, and purses, and hats, and umbrellas, and wallets went flying, and then no one wanted to cross the bridge ever again, because they were terrified, so they had to do a publicity stunt. P.T. Barnum and his circus elephants kind of made a deal that they would cross the bridge, all of his elephants, including his largest elephant, Jumbo, to prove to the people that it was safe to cross. And there's a children's book about Jumbo and the Brooklyn Bridge, if you want to check it out. Come on. The Brooklyn Bridge. The next bridge we're going to go under is the Manhattan Bridge. The Manhattan Bridge is designed for subways as well as cars and pedestrians and bicyclists. The Brooklyn Bridge never had subways, although they dreamed about putting subways over it. It was never necessary because the Manhattan Bridge took the brunt of it. They did have a trolley across the Brooklyn Bridge originally, and today there's a fabulous pedestrian walkway, and the bikes are on their own path, which is nice. A lot of people just get off of the City Hall station in Manhattan, walk up to the first tower, and walk back to get their photos. So that's like the busiest part of the bridge. If you want it a little less busy, you go to the Brooklyn side. Underneath the Manhattan Bridge on the Brooklyn side is a neighborhood called Dumbo. It gets its name from the Manhattan Bridge. Dumbo stands for Down Under the Manhattan Bridge Overpass. I think it's kind of cool. It's Down Under the Manhattan Bridge Overpass, Dumbo. But each neighborhood's got to have a name sometime. So Dumbo it is. We're going to take a break here if you want to grab a drink. We got some snacks downstairs. We also got people coming around with your official Circle Line photo. If you want to check that out, I'll catch up with you just under the next bridge, the Williamsburg Bridge. They've stabilized the exterior, and they're going to build another building inside it. If you love park on the waterfront, and they put a taco place on the waterfront. Who doesn't love tacos on the waterfront? If you don't love tacos on the waterfront, please don't tell me. They don't want to dislike you for the rest of the tour. Don't like tacos on the waterfront. That's yourself. both officially part of Long Island. But if you meet anyone who lives in Brooklyn, you'll find that they will say things like, I'm going to Long Island this weekend. And despite the fact they're already on Long Island, they're just going further onto Long Island and are probably using English New York proper to get there. Brooklyn is known for Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, Coney Island, the New York Aquarium, as well as Williamsburg, a neighborhood that has some great microbreweries, restaurants, and street art. So we're passing by Newtown Creek as it comes in to the East River. It's just to the right of the Red Crane. That's dividing Brooklyn and Queens. Queens is where I live, and Astoria. It is where we have our two airports, LaGuardia and JFK. It's also where the Mets play baseball at Citi Field. 2.5 million people live in Queens, and 5 million people are buried in Queens. Why does this matter? Well, this is not be a population number. It's not finding yourself Queens. Not safe. The odds are not good. Get yourself to Manhattan. Find a circle line. We'll be there. It'll be an emergency. We'll be 9 days before, and you're alive. So don't find yourself in Queens. My grandparents are there. They're very Queens. My grandfather was a grumpy old man. Like, it's not so, find somewhere else. This is the apocalypse stuff.
Porsche? Meinte er.
Come up in the middle of the East River is Roosevelt Island. Roosevelt Island used to be the spot that we put all the things that we didn't want. You know, the quarantine hospital, the prison, the state asylum, like all of that went onto Roosevelt Island. Today it's got a lovely population of residences. Cornell University is there, as well as a couple different houses of worship. There's also Starbucks here, other houses of worship. But on the tip is Roosevelt Memorial Park with all the beautiful orange yellow foliage. And just past the park is a old structure that's got ivy crawling on it. The ivy building is an old smallpox hospital. That today is landmarks that can be torn down, but it's not safe for people to go inside it. They don't know for sure it's not going to fall at any River. They also seem to think it's possible for a white man to go running through the neighborhoods in Spanish Harlem yelling, Maria, 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 and only have one woman come to the window. Clearly they've never been there. On the right side of the boat we have an equestrian school. I'm not sure what they're teaching the horses, but they seem pretty happy. No, they prioritize folks with disabilities and medical conditions for horse therapy, but anyone can go and hang out with the horses. I think it's too cold for them now to have gone home to a warmer spot for the winter. Then we have a large outcropping of buildings on the island, which is one of our current mental health institutions. Once we get past Spanish Harlem, we try to get into Harlem proper. I did have someone ask me, are there still black people in Harlem? There are still black people in Harlem. And although Harlem has definitely shrunk, originally it was like 96th Street that was kind of the dividing line between the white people and the black people. And I know there's a comedian who jokes about how, once you get past 96th Street, there's no white people in the subway anymore, but he had fallen asleep, and so somebody woke him up so to make sure he would get off, and they're like, you're not supposed to be going past this point, we know. So they were very kind in waking him up before that last stop. But today the gentrification has moved up, I would say, up to 110th Street, or maybe even 115th. Kind of the gentrification has moved up. And when I say that, I mean the neighborhood's kind of started to shift, and apartments are getting renovated and are just more expensive in general. But there still is a vibrant community up in Harlem. It's still the heart of black culture. Lots of poetry and movies and music and comedy coming out of Harlem. 125th Street is kind of the heart and soul of Harlem still today. That's where the Apollo Theater is if you want to check out any performances. Wednesday night is amateur night if you want to check it out. Fun night. Check out the Apollo Theater. There's some great dining on Frederick Douglass Boulevard. There's great dining all over the area. And then there's a historic neighborhood called Strivers Row, which is a beautiful old brownstone that you're looking for, a really historic spot to check out. On the Manhattan side, we're just passing by an old school. We have a high school. We have about 400 high schools in New York City, so we have lots of young people. I know some people are like, it's just busy young people, workers. And I know we have children and families too. And then we're passing by a mall. You gotta have a mall. It has Costco. We have all the things. We just gotta get a little further away. And then you have to get a taxi. right side of the boat. You see there's some tents up for events and expos. I have a friend who's really into the bicycle community in New York, and they were having a bike swap meet at 10 p.m. on a Friday, and everyone was going to come, and they were going to bring their bikes. If you're trying to sell your bike or swap your bike or buy a bike, and they have barbecue, so it's just kind of a fun, place you can have gatherings. We're coming up under the last leg of the Triborough Bridge. The Triborough Bridge spans way back behind us, and then it kind of goes along the length of Randall's Island. And one leg of it goes up to the Bronx, and the other comes out and spits you out on 125th Street in Manhattan, which is the heart of Harlem. So as we go under this last leg, that's where 125th Street, Harlem is. I'm going to be around if you have any questions. We're going to take a break right up until Yankee Stadium. I'll let you know when it's coming up. We got snacks down below and fun drinks on both levels. If you're looking for soda or hot drinks, those are also down on the main deck, not up on the upper deck. Restrooms are all the way down, so you can all feel the polo ground, which is on the Manhattan side. The Giants were a team that put in going to the World Series, and they were rocking it. And then the Yankees came around, and they were like, I guess you can play at our baseball. We're not playing, that's fine. There's a picture of the Red Sox So much so that after we polluted all the waterways, there wasn't enough fresh water to water all the people. The water that was there was toxic. So they started to drink beer as a form of dehydrating. The kids still have a cup of beer at lunch. Roman aqueduct technology to get water 40 miles north in New York now to Manhattan using gravity, the slightest degree of gravity is the water. And then they use gravity in the water towers to build the highest tower that we saw is higher or as high as Rockefeller. On the Manhattan side, we see a lot of green. There's a big park over there. We see Yeshiva University, the big tall building, the big brown building is over there. And we get out of bedrock. We dynamite and take the water, the river wider here, and the waterway. by the Rockefellers. And I need to back up a little to tell you about the Rockefellers and how much money they actually had. So the Rockefellers loved to travel, and you all love to travel. I know because you're here in New York City probably. The Rockefellers love to travel, and when you travel, you probably buy like t-shirts or magnets or shot glasses or little fancy t-shirts, or you buy baskets or pottery, something you might buy when you're on vacation, something you like to buy. But Rockefeller likes to buy medieval ruins. So they'd be in France, and they'd see this pile of medieval ruins, and they'd be like, hey France, are you doing anything with this? They're like, no, it's medieval ruins. We got plenty of those. I'm like, can we have it? Can we buy it from you? And they're like, yeah, I guess. The Rockefellers collected so many medieval ruins that they were able to piece together their own cloisters up here in Manhattan. So they bought the land that the cloisters are on the Manhattan side, and they put together their own medieval cloisters, pieced together by medieval ruin pieces from all over Europe, with lots of statuaries and crypts and stained glass windows. They even put together like a little medieval garden with some like herbs and such. And then they bought the area around the cloisters, Fort Tryon, and they said, we want the area to be pristine, as if it were all medieval. So when you're looking out the window, it feels, not modern. And then they went up into that tower, and they looked across the river to New Jersey, and they were like, we want that to look all pristine too. So they bought up all of the Palisades, all of the waterfront on the New Jersey side, and they said, we will give this to the city as long as you keep it pristine for the cloisters to look out of and be medieval. So that's how much money the Rockefellers had. You can check out the cloisters as part of your Metropolitan Art Museum ticket. We have some beautiful art, including unicorn tapestries, which is a beautiful old tapestries that tell the story of the unicorn hunt. It's a little graphic if you're not ready for that. Warning you. But definitely a beautiful, you're here to look at all the beautiful areas, and I'm going to get much better. The last bridge we're going to go under is the George Washington Bridge. The George Washington Bridge is the 50th bridge in the world. Every day it has over 500,000 vehicles going over it. It is the only bridge to connect Manhattan and New Jersey. And some people are like, we need another one. But as I was saying, New York's trying to go carbon neutral by 2050. So it's very unlikely that we get another car or vehicle bridge between the two states. And it is two different states, so there's also that issue of having to agree on the west, maintain it, run it. That's a complicated thing. The George Washington Bridge connects 180th Street, Washington Heights on the Manhattan side, with Fort Lee, New Jersey. The bridge is still yet unfinished. When it was started, they had plans that Cass Gilbert would do stonework around the buildings that you see, the big glass buildings, are the new campus for Columbia University. They hired Renzo Piano to design those buildings, and then they hired some local firms from Harlem to make them happen. So they have a brand new science building, an performing arts space, and they also have a conference center down there. They have a shuttle bus to get people down there from up the hill. So on the Manhattan side, in the distance, there's a really big bell tower. That's Riverside Church, and just behind it is where Columbia University is. So that's how far they have to come. Line is, up on 86th Street, so it's just up in there, not too far, if you want to check it out. We catch a glimpse of the three tall skyscrapers on Billionaires Row on the Manhattan side. So 56th Street is Billionaires Row. Back in the day, Millionaires Row was Fifth Avenue, but Billionaires Row, people now want to look down on Central Park, but they don't want to be right on Central Park because they don't want to deal with the tourists on that street. So 56th, 7th Street, just a couple blocks off, you can look down onto the people. My uncle really loves the Steinway Tower, which has kind of the stairs looking down on the back of it. It's the thinnest skyscraper in the city. And my mom really likes to read about articles where bad things happen to the people in the buildings that are really tall. Like there's little, leaks coming down on the 60th floor. They don't know whether it's coming from the 61st floor or to the 81st floor. So they have to go and look up, where the leak's coming from. And she just takes a little pride in the wealthy people, struggling with their really, really tall buildings. So Millionaires Row was Fifth Avenue originally, and the Millionaires moved up to Fifth Avenue because St. Patrick's Cathedral was built there, and it was built on either side of the Civil War. So by the 1870s it was done, and it smacked of Europe. So even if the wealthy people didn't worship at St. Patrick's Church, they wanted to come up and be close to it. So Fifth Avenue started to get filled with millionaires' mansions. And then, as the park finishes and becomes more appealing, people start to move up even further up to the park to be near the park. So you have your mansion on Fifth Avenue, and then you start building your mansion on Central Park, west or east, and you got it going on. The one family in particular, the Plant family, Maisie and Freeman Plant, they made their money in railroads, and they had their mansion on Fifth Avenue. Maisie was in love with a double strand of pearls that Cartier had made. So this is 1900. This is when pearls are super valuable. They're more valuable than diamonds because you have to dive down and pry open the oysters and get them out, and they're all different sizes. So before they have figured out how to farm pearls so that they irritate the oysters to get them to force to make the same size pearl. This is back, they're all different shapes and sizes. So Cartier has collected enough pearls to create a double strand, and so they all fit beautifully together, the small ones to the bigger ones, and then back to the smaller ones. Maisie is in love with this double strand of pearls. She'd go visit them every day, and they are valued at $950,000 in 1900. So she's in love with the pearls, and one day at a dinner party, Pierre Cartier and Maisie Plant are seated next to each other at a dinner party, and Pierre says to Maisie, "When are you going to buy the pearls?" She says, "I can't afford the pearls." And Pierre says, "Give me your house and I'll give you the pearls." Now you would think this is a crazy request, but they had already started building their home up by the park, and they didn't know what they were going to do with their mansion anyway. Pierre was never going to be able to sell those pearls. It was an incredible deal, and they did it. They went for it. The Plant Mansion for the double strand of pearls and $100. That was the trade that was made. And Pierre Cartier flagship store is still on Fifth Avenue and the old Plant family mansion. So if you're on Fifth Avenue and you see the red awnings, that is the Cartier mansion. Know that that's how they got it. Double strand of pearls. Now that strand of pearls is still in existence today, although unfortunately for the Plant family, pearls went down in value quite a bit about 20 years later. It was last seen at Christie's in the 60s, so keep your eyes out. It should be back on the market anytime. It's about time to see that double strand of pearls again. Maisie Plant string of pearls. So people often ask me, where did the plane land? Miracle on the Hudson, a movie starring Tom Hanks, actually took place in January 2009. U.S. Airways plane took off from LaGuardia Airport, headed for Charlotte, North Carolina, and shortly into the voyage, into the flight, they ran into a flock of Canadian geese, and both of the engines were taken out. And Captain Sully has to make an emergency landing, and he has to decide whether to try to get back to LaGuardia Airport, maybe make it over to a small airport in New Jersey, or he sees the Hudson, and he's like, that's probably the softest landing a person could wish for. So in the little miracle, the plane floats. And all 155 passengers and crew survived the emergency landing. They crawled out onto the wing. It's January. Some of the people try to swim for it. Trauma's not great on everyone. Makes more decisions sometimes. They radio in for people to come rescue them on the Hudson. And guess who's the third on the scene? The Circle Line. On this boat, the very boat that you're on, was the third to rescue some of the passengers and crew of the U.S. Airways plane that made the emergency landing on the Hudson. They landed at Pier 90, which is coming up in just a little bit. And the plane continued to float down south as the rescue crews came in. And then eventually made it all the way down to the harbor, where it was there for a couple days. And then they airlifted it out of the harbor for it to be inspected, because they had to know, was everything done right. And then people, a couple months later, people's waterlogged luggage was returned to them. And the plane is on display in Charlotte, North Carolina. They very quickly, if you want to check out more of the U.S. Airways, the British Museum on the Hudson. We're up on the Hudson, that's right here, folks. At Pier 90. I want to invite you to take this moment to look around. We still got about 10 minutes before we get back to the pier, but just take a moment to look around. You make sure you have all your belongings with you, your children, your grandparents, your lovers. If you want to leave your lovers with me, you can, but know that we're going back to Astoria for Greek food, and I do not pay for taxi rides back to Midtown, so budget that into your choices about leaving people behind with me, although we'll have a good time. We are a little far away from Midtown. It's kind of a big trek if you leave your phone. We'll have it, but make sure you have it with you. You'll have a better rest of your vacation. I'm going to take a moment to close off the stairways in Wilmington Park. I don't want anyone rocking and rolling on the stairs, and we'll come back and we'll wrap up. Right? There'll be rainbows as the Mets are playing, and orange and blue. If it's Christmas, it's green and red. And then at 8 o'clock, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and 10 p.m., we'll open the big dance. Server room to try to figure out how to change colors, but actually it's on someone's app. And so I'm determined to find the person with the app. If you have any tips or ideas about what this person looks like, please let me know. I'm determined to change the color of the Empire State Building to hot pink and yellow. So if you know, please give me any tips or information you have about that. I want to tell you about Broadway before we get off the boat. In order to be a Broadway theater, you have to have 600 seats or more, 500 seats or more. 500 seats or more on the island of Manhattan to be considered a Broadway theater. Between 100 and 499, you are off Broadway if you're on the island of Manhattan. And if you're 99 seats or less, you are off Broadway. Now, when I got this job, I heard that the boat has 600 seats. And I said to myself, oh my God, Alexis, you have done it. You've made it in New York City. And then my boss told me, Alexis, you're working the Hudson. You are not on Manhattan. I am sorry, you are off Broadway. And I said, so close, so close. But when I was 10 years old, my mom sent me to be taught a song, a voice teacher, so I could start auditioning for shows. And I would like to sing that song for you now. And if you want to sing along, you're welcome to. You ready? Dun, dun, da, da, dun, dun, da, 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 dun, dun, da, 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 da. Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are longing to stray. appropriate. It'll be a smoother disembarkment that way, and everything will stay legal. So thanks so much for choosing the Circle Line today. If you want to all stay seated till we finish parking, I'll let you know when it's time to come down. Enjoy the rest of your day in New York. Thanks for coming aboard.